There is a specific kind of silence that happens right before a room decides it has seen too much and then decides it can't look away anyway. It has happened at award shows, at stadium tours, on live television with censors scrambling in real time. It keeps happening because every generation produces a woman who refuses to perform smaller than she actually is.
I never thought I'd be asking Cher to hold my meat purse.
We already gave you 12 names. The scandals never ran out. They just kept finding new stages. Tonight, 10 more women who turned exposure into architecture, who built entire careers out of moments networks, tried to cut, and audiences refused to forget. This is Pop Echoes. Let's count them down. Number 10, Tina Turner. By the mid-1960s, Tina Turner had already redefined what physical stamina on a rock stage looked like. Performing with Ike Turner's Revue, she moved in fringe dresses and heels through routines so relentlessly athletic that opening acts reportedly refused to follow her set, knowing the crowd would already be spent by the time they walked out. Nightclub owners who booked the Revue as a novelty act quickly found themselves booking her again and again because nothing else on the circuit matched the sheer physical intensity she brought to a stage built for far tamer acts. Her stage presence combined gospel-rooted vocal power with a rawness that mainstream pop had no real category for. Critics fixated on the legs, the hair, the sheer physical intensity of a woman running full routines in heels for 90 minutes straight, often missing that she was directing the choreography, the vocal arrangements, and the band's entire energy herself, night after night, while receiving a fraction of the credit and even less of the money. After leaving Ike in 1976 with almost nothing but her stage name and 36 cents in her pocket, by her own later account, she rebuilt an entire solo career in her 40s on the same instincts that had unsettled polite audiences a decade earlier. The 1984 comeback with Private Dancer wasn't really a reinvention. It was the same fire, finally credited to her alone, filtered through a sound the radio was finally ready for, after years of resistance. By the time she was filling stadiums in leather and thigh-high boots into her 50s, in front of crowds decades younger than her, the industry had quietly stopped calling it too much and started calling it iconic, awarding her the credit it had withheld for 20 years. Number 9, Debbie Harry. Blondie's Debbie Harry built a persona out of contradiction on purpose. Platinum hair, torn dresses, a deadpan delivery that made overt sexuality feel like a private joke she was in on, and the audience was never quite sure whether they were in on it too, which was exactly the tension she was going for from the very first shows at CBGB. She performed in see-through tops and thrift store lingerie years before punk had a settled uniform, using her image as a deliberate weapon against the tidy pop star mold record labels wanted to pour her into. Photographers loved her instantly and made her one of the most shot faces of the era. Executives found her far harder to manage than they expected, because she treated her own image as something she designed herself, rather than something assigned to her by a marketing department. Harry later said, the persona functioned as armor as much as attraction, a way to command a room full of men without asking any of them for permission first, and without pretending the power dynamic in the room didn't exist. It worked well enough that Blondie crossed over from the dive bar downtown scene straight into mainstream radio without softening a single edge of the presentation that got her there in the first place. Decades later, she's still cited by artists from Gwen Stefani to Miley Cyrus as proof that irony and exposure could occupy the same stage at the same time without canceling each other out, and that a woman could be the joke, the punchline, and the one in on it all at once. Number 8, Siouxsie Sioux. Siouxsie Sioux walked onto London stages in the late 1970s, wearing bondage gear, smeared makeup, and a stare that dared photographers to flinch first. As frontwoman of Siouxsie and the Banshees, she treated the female body as something closer to a weapon than an invitation, and she made sure every audience understood the difference immediately, from the first note of the first song. Her early performances, born out of London's Bromley contingent punk scene alongside future icons of the movement, sometimes included deliberately shocking imagery pulled straight from wartime iconography, engineered specifically to horrify a British press that was already primed to be horrified by punk in general, and by young women in particular who refused to look decorative. That press obliged, repeatedly and predictably, running story after story painting her as a public menace. Tabloids called her every name available to them at the time. Siouxsie never issued a correction, and never softened the act to make anyone more comfortable. She simply changed her makeup for the next show and let the outrage build her reputation for her, night after night, without lifting a finger to manage the narrative herself. Her gothic, androgynous aesthetic became the direct blueprint for an entire subculture that outlived punk itself by decades, influencing fashion, film, and music long after the original scene had scattered. Without her, there is no goth scene as anyone recognizes it today, and very few of the artists who followed will deny it when asked directly. Number 7. Grace Slick. In the psychedelic haze of late 1960s San Francisco, Grace Slick fronted Jefferson Airplane with a voice built to cut clean through a wall of guitars and a refusal to play the era's flower child sweetness that everyone else on the bill seemed to be performing without question. Her stage presence was confrontational rather than dreamy. She reportedly once attempted to attend a Nixon White House event in blackface as a deliberate political stunt alongside Yippie activist Abby Hoffman, and she regularly used festival stages to deliver blunt, unscripted commentary between songs that made promoters visibly nervous about what she might say into a live microphone next. At Woodstock, she performed at dawn to an exhausted, half-asleep crowd of hundreds of thousands after a full night of delays, and still managed to command the entire field with nothing but volume, timing, and sheer nerve, turning a logistical scheduling disaster into one of the festival's most remembered sets decades later. Slick's refusal to be the gentle female voice tucked politely into a male band became the exact reason Jefferson Airplane sounded dangerous instead of ornamental, and why she's remembered today as a co-architect of the band's sound rather than simply its decoration or its frontwoman for hire. Number 6. Amanda Lear. It's tough. Amanda Lear built a European stage career almost entirely on ambiguity. A muse to Salvador Dali throughout the 1960s, she moved into disco in the 1970s, wearing metallic bodysuits and delivering deep, deliberately androgynous vocals that fueled decades of public speculation about her identity, her age, and her background that she never once moved to settle. I must look rich wherever you go, wear them on the beach. She performed on European television with a physicality that blurred glamour and provocation in equal measure, refusing interviewers who pressed her repeatedly for a tidy, verifiable biography they could print without controversy attached to it, and enjoying the discomfort her silence clearly caused them on camera. Boys and girls, wear them when you're young, wear them when you're old. Rather than correct the persistent rumors swirling around her for years, Lear leaned into the mystery as part of the show itself, understanding correctly that the uncertainty was more compelling to audiences than any tidy explanation could ever be, and that clarity would only shrink the character she had spent years constructing. See how they shine, cha-cha, cha-cha, it's for champagne. That refusal to explain herself on anyone else's terms made her one of disco's strangest and most enduring stars, one who still commands genuine cult devotion decades after the genre itself faded from the charts, and most of her peers faded with it. Number 5. Christina Aguilera. In 2002, Christina Aguilera shed her teen pop image almost overnight with the penny stripped era. Leather chaps, exposed midriffs, and choreography built around raw physicality rather than the polished innocence her earlier image had depended on entirely to sell records to a much younger audience. MTV aired heavily edited versions of her videos to satisfy internal standards concerns before they would air at all. Parents groups organized formal complaints and public letter-writing campaigns against the imagery, treating the shift as a betrayal of the wholesome persona her earlier fan base had been sold just a few years prior. Aguilera's response was to lean harder into the new imagery rather than retreat from any of it, framing the entire shift explicitly in interviews as reclaiming ownership of her own sexuality after years of industry-managed, carefully curated innocence that had never really reflected who she actually was offstage. Critics split hard on the era at the time. Some called it genuine empowerment, others dismissed it outright as calculated shock engineered purely for sales. Aguilera rarely engaged the debate directly in interviews, letting the vocal performances and the eventual sales numbers answer the critics for her instead. Number 4. Britney Spears. Britney Spears' 2001 MTV VMA performance, closing the show in a nude-toned bodysuit with a live python draped across her shoulders, became one of the most replayed and dissected moments in award show history within hours of airing on television that night. It followed years of relentless tabloid obsession over her transition from teen idol to adult pop star, an obsession that scrutinized her body publicly and constantly, in print and on television, in ways rarely applied with the same intensity to her male peers working in the same industry at the same time. The performance was widely read afterward as Spears seizing narrative control of that scrutiny, rather than continuing to simply absorb it passively from the sidelines, staging the transformation deliberately and on the single biggest stage the industry could offer her that particular year. The backlash, the headlines, and the think pieces that followed shaped an entire decade of broader public conversation about how the music industry consumes, packages, and eventually discards its young female stars once they age past a certain point. Number 3, Kesha. Kesha arrived in 2009, covered in glitter, spray-painted denim, and lyrics about brushing her teeth with a bottle of Jack Daniels, building an early persona around deliberate, gleeful chaos, rather than any conventional pop polish that her label might have preferred instead. Hands up, you got me now, you got that sound. Her live shows leaned fully into that chaos, smeared makeup, torn tights, and constant stage banter that openly mocked pop glamour rather than performing it earnestly the way most of her contemporaries were still doing on similar stages at the time. Later, after a prolonged and highly public legal battle over creative and financial control of her own career and catalog, that same defiant early excess read very differently in retrospect. Not carelessness at all, but a woman refusing to be tidy or easily managed on someone else's terms from the very beginning of her career. Kesha's arc from party anthem provocateur to outspoken industry advocate fundamentally reframed how audiences and critics alike understood the performer they thought they had already figured out years earlier, before she said a word about any of it. Number 2, Rihanna. Rihanna's 2014 CFDA Fashion Awards appearance in a sheer, crystal-covered Adam Selman gown left almost nothing to interpretation, and the photos circulated globally within hours, dominating entertainment coverage for days afterward across nearly every outlet. It wasn't an isolated moment either.
Thank you. And
Across tours, red carpets, and album rollouts spanning more than a decade, Rihanna repeatedly used near nudity as a directed fashion statement rather than an accident, working closely and deliberately with stylists to control exactly how much was shown and precisely why it was shown that particular way.
and it's a way that you can I enjoy.
That deliberateness distinguished her sharply from performers accused of simply chasing scandal for headlines and attention. Critics increasingly described her choices as genuine fashion authorship, backed by her own rapidly growing business empire, spanning beauty, cosmetics, and lingerie by the mid-2010s. By the time she launched Savage X Fenty as a full lingerie and fashion house with its own runway shows, the provocation had visibly matured into a philosophy rather than remaining just a photograph or a single viral red carpet moment. Number 1. Lady Gaga.
Thank you so much. I was so nervous for tonight that I would let my fans down.
Lady Gaga spent her early career treating the stage as a laboratory for exactly how far a pop performance could be pushed before it broke into something else entirely. Bubble dresses, fake blood, and the infamous 2010 VMA meat dress that dominated global headlines for weeks afterward and still gets referenced today. Beneath the spectacle sat genuine craft, classically trained piano technique developed since childhood, theater school instincts sharpened over years of downtown New York performance art shows, and a stated belief that extremity was the fastest available way to force an audience to actually pay attention to the music underneath all the imagery. Critics frequently called it attention-seeking and dismissed it outright as gimmickry, designed purely for shock value and tabloid coverage. Gaga consistently called it performance art with a pop budget instead, and refused to separate the two categories even as her career matured into film roles and jazz standards years later.
New record. It's called...
Little Monsters didn't just tolerate the excess along the way, they understood it as the entire point of the project from the very beginning, which is exactly why the whole persona worked as durably as it has for well over a decade now.
I love you so much. Thank you to my family and Troy and Vince.